and welcome to another Dwarven Tavern talk. This time, we are talking about
Faye.
And I am your host, and we are your hosts, Dr. Jeff Goins.
And Lyric Goins.
And we were actually watching a really, really good movie the other day, and it got us on the subject of talking about the Fae, the fairy creatures, the fairy court, etc., etc. And we got into a really good discussion, so we thought we'd put it into a video so we could share this discussion with you folks at home so you can play along. So what were the initial thoughts about it? The movie actually was Mama.
Yes.
It's a Guillermo del Toro flick. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but we highly recommend it because we were just in the mood for potentially a silly horror flick, and what happened was a really good story. Mama, we came to the conclusion that that Mama was a fae, and we'll go from there. Not to give any spoilers away.
The story of Mama and a lot of films like it use the excuse that the supernatural being is a ghost, and a lot of people use ghost as an umbrella term for other creatures. And
things they don't understand.
If you're well-educated gamers like we are, then you'll know that there's difference between things like Mama and other ghost-like creatures. And the reason that distinction is important is because ghosts have abilities that Fae don't have, and vice versa. And when you're talking about creatures that are similar but different, then that distinction needs to be made. Otherwise, then it becomes like Twilight all over again.
Right, and when you have when you're talking in game terms, in D&D specifically, there are the different monsters of ghosts, of incorporeal, of undead, and Fae are they are very distinct. They have different abilities. Their attacks have different effects, and like a ghost, a straight up ghost in D&D ages you, right? You age from 10 to 40 years. I that was in first edition. I don't really know what it is in third edition.
We'll
Monster Man. We'll have to look that up. But
maybe one of you can inform us in the comments.
Because ghosts are attached to the ethereal plane, and the ethereal plane is apparently that thing which is your age. Because when you see a ghost, you can age, and then when it attacks you and hits you, then you'll age. Whereas the Fae, fairy creatures, are their own brand, just like undead. You've got the classification of undead, classification of Fae, but where is the line? Because there are a bunch of movies in which cats invade things.
The loyal and trusty tavern cat.
The loyal and trusty tavern cat, because we're talking about fairies. He's like, where?
I have to protect her. He's my familiar, so of course.
Very much so. But the Fae, there's a movie called with Katie Holmes called "Don't Be Afraid of the Dark," and it's about the Fae. I don't believe you've seen it.
I've seen Darkness, but I don't think I have seen the previous mentioned movie.
Right, and it is very, very specifically Fae. And then there is of course a very, very controversial.
What did you point at?
Franchise. I was afraid he was going to step on that computer there and send it off. And there's a very controversial franchise called. A very famous controversial franchise called Twilight.
Yes.
Yeah. Some people say, "Don't get me started." Well,
we got started.
We're started.
The difference, this distinction is important because, like I said before, certain creatures can do certain things, and Twilight, the author, called them vampires because she wasn't well educated in the mythology of monsters and what
I
other.
don't think she was well versed in anything except writing romance novels.
I was trying to be generous,
I'm
but
not generous at all.
she-
right now. I'm the dungeon master. I don't have to be generous.
she was educated in vampirism and that you have to drink blood to survive and you don't age and stuff, but that can also be a numerous amount of fae. And in the tavern, we have come to the conclusion that Edward and his family were just a bunch of fae, because not fairies, but monsters of mystical, unexplainable abilities.
Of fairy ilk.
Yes, and of that type. And, like, the fact that he sparkles. That's not a vampire trait, that's a fae trait.
Yeah, vampires die in the sunlight.
Yeah.
And if you... it might have been just a defense mechanism so we wouldn't actually vomit and die ourselves as we watch these horrific films. I didn't like it at all. But...
I got through the first page of the book and had a headache,
Yeah, I
so I couldn't even
look
read
at
it.
the books. It's the drinking of blood, fairies
Mm-hmm.
and the fae are known. I mean, there's so many different types of fae. Drinking human blood. I mean, red caps.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
I know.
Yeah.
Red caps are tiny fae that kill people. They can grow into large size if they need to, but they're tiny fae that get their strength from the blood of their victims. When they kill someone, they open up a vein in the victim and they dip their hat. They soak their hat in their victim's blood, and they wear it, and that gives them strength. Okay, so what's the difference between that and if you go a little further with drinking the blood and make it just a little bit different? All you have to do is just modify it a little bit, and you've got drinking blood. And
it's not just vampirism and fae and all that stuff. There are a lot of other creatures that drink blood. So making the distinction important.
There are a lot of natural creatures that drink blood.
Exactly, like vampire bats.
The vampire bat, for example. Yeah.
I can't think of anything else because I'm trying to make a point, and obviously
there's actually a type of butterfly that drinks blood.
or moth. There's
That's
also a moth,
and a moth,
like
and
insects.
Tons of insects, mosquitoes, etc.
That's probably where the
Ticks.
idea of fae came from. Is insects with
Leeches.
leeching abilities.
Yeah, I mean all those things drink blood because blood is
Essential. It's a life
lots
force.
of sugars and proteins and etc.
Not to mention that human blood can be... It's different from fae and from vampires. Vampires crave it, and they desire to have it because that's what they once were. It's life force. It's what keeps people going. But for fae, they want to drink the blood because it's the nectar of life. They might think it's a lot sweeter than we do. Because when we drink it, we taste the iron and the copper. But
Right.
when they
Mostly
drink
the
it,
copper.
they probably taste like the sucrose or...
Not that we drink blood
We don't.
often.
Shush. But the words that I had are gone.
Oh, that's a shame. They
Yes.
were vampired from
They
your,
were vampired.
from your head.
It's because you're reading my mind and sucking me dry.
I'm reading it and deleting it as I go. But the vampiric nature is not the thing that classifies a vampire as a vampire. Is the fact that a person had to die first,
Yes.
and the person comes back in traditional. If they're given an improper burial, or they're lost, or they're just not buried at all, they have a chance of coming back from the dead, and they maintain. I mean, there's a lot of old legends, mostly from the Transylvanian, Hungary,
Region?
Slavic region, and vampires are bodies that are possessed of an evil spirit, and they're not the people you once knew. That's a very important distinction. It's just a dead body possessed by some evil thing that maintains itself through the drinking of the blood of the loved ones of that person. Mary Shelley's, no, it was Bram Stoker, excuse me, Mary Shelley was Frankenstein. Bram Stoker's Dracula, his vampires were very, roses killed them, silver hurt them, sunlight, of course, they burst into flames. They can't cross water, they can't cross...
Moving water, specifically.
Moving water, they can't cross moving water, like a stream, because there's too much purity there.
You can just cleanse away all the bad stuff.
And anything that's pure and you know, they can't cross fire, because of course fire is the great purifier. And so they're very specifically dead. A stake through the heart, holy wafers in the mouth, burn candles around them, they're gone forever. And the stake had to be made of ash or yew wood. And their heads had to be cut off by a church grave digger's spade.
I thought the wood of the stake had to be made from that said spake.
Spake?
Spade. Spake.
You
Steak.
You spake the wrong word.
I did.
It could be, but a fresh sapling of yew or of ash could do it. But their heads definitely had to be cut off by the blade of the church graveyard gravedigger's spade, and it was pretty complex things. And there are different, like the hopping vampire. If you've ever seen the movie Rigor Mortis, that's a good flick. It's a Chinese flick, or perhaps Korean. I think it's Chinese. It's a good flick, and it's about a hopping vampire. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into being a vampire and goes into killing a vampire. They're very, very specific about it. Which the Fae are not necessarily. I mean, the vampires of Twilight, they sparkled in the sunlight.
They drank blood of humans, but they didn't have to.
They didn't have to drink human blood. You could kill them by ripping them apart. A regular vampire would go back together, could turn into mist. They didn't have any shape-shifting abilities, did they?
Not that I can think of. And
in the Transylvanian and the Slavic legends, vampires and werewolves were so closely related that when someone was executed as a werewolf, then they would make sure that they burned the body completely away or had it on some severely consecrated ground, because a dead werewolf could come back as a vampire. That's how closely the two are related. And of course the Twilight thing kind of mutated that and made them enemies.
Well, there's mutation in the media, obviously, that happens, and a lot of mystical happenstance and complications can be simplified through bad movie making and people who don't do the research. Just like the Wolfman curse, you get bitten, or you can sell your soul to the devil for an ointment that makes you a wolf, or wear a cloak. You have nightmares because you don't remember what happened, and it only happens on the full moon, and then that's completely demolished. But bringing it round back to the Fae, there's so much diversity, and there's so much creativity in the Fae world that things that happen to, like, the vampires and the werewolves, that stuff happens all the time without us even knowing. So mutations about different types of Fae, and the ability from, for example, for the vampire going from the needing your head chopped off by a spade with holy wafers in your mouth to sparkling in the sunlight, that actually happens in the Fae world, where those mutations can take place. And that's why it's important to make the distinction between them, because Fae, they have, like, they're a whole world on their own. If all the humans and the humanoid beings left, say, Middle Earth, the Fae would just take over, and it would be like nothing ever happened. Yeah. While if you took everything else away from the vampires would slowly die. And that would be that.
Right.
So the other point that we were bringing up was the first thing that we mentioned was Mama, and that in the movie she was supposed to be a ghost, and the distinction is very important because she wasn't a ghost. I don't want to give anything away,
right. but that actually what that did was that led us to the movie Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, which you have not seen yet.
I don't know. I think I might have. I don't know. The title sounds familiar.
What? Because this was a movie with I think it was Sandy Dennis. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure about that. But it was a movie in which there was a house and there were tiny fae living in the vents and in the basement around the boiler, and they would kidnap people and transform them into one of them. Right? So, seeing how the fae actually need to bolster their ranks with the bodies and consciousness of humans makes me wonder if being a fae isn't actually just an energy that transforms people into fairies, and that there are no actual original fairies.
That would not be surprising to me. That would actually make a lot of sense. Max.
Move the computer so it's completely on the table, and that won't matter.
So,
what happens in all of the legends and all of the things that I've read and seen, like the Irish legend of the Cutty Black Sow. The Cutty Black Sow is it's a fairy tale, and it's actually a cautionary tale to young children to be good around Christmas time, because if you're not, then the Cutty Black Sow will come and take you away. This is a type of fae, and it appears as someone very close to you, like the Rakshasa in Hindu legends. It appears to someone. It appears to you as someone you trust, and then when it gets to you and you've let it in, which is the big thing, you have to let it in. Then
that's true for pretty much
a lot of things that are bound by magical or supernatural rules. But when you let it in, it turns into a human being with a large black pig's head, with whiskers so big and so sharp that they actually cut you, and that's why they call it Cutty. And it's a Cutty Black Sow, and it takes you away and probably devours you.
Yeah.
If you're if you're a bad child, yeah, a pig will devour.
And as you can see, since I'm still here,
you are a good child.
I'm a good kid.
So this
decent enough.
So the actual fae, I think they kind of make up their own rules as they become almost like humans. But the difference is the fae abide by their rules,
and we don't.
And they're bound. That's right, we don't. They are bound by their rules. That's why there are if you want to get rid of a fairy or something, a certain type of sprite in your house, you put wind chimes out, and that will keep them away. It has nothing to do with anything, because it won't keep some things away.
Right.
So just being a fairy doesn't mean that wind chimes is proof against the fae.
Right.
It just means that one kind has a rule that says if a house has wind chimes, you can't go in it.
Right.
Red brick dust. This is a pretty common
keep away thing.
Preventative, yeah, it's a preventative measure for
in his vocabulary. Keep away thing in mine.
And if you dust your portals, folks. If you dust your portals with red brick dust, it keeps out spirits of hostile intent. So that's a pretty universal thing too. But some fae, ghosts and other inhuman spirits and things, they stay away from your house. And this is in the real world that we're talking. I don't know if you believe in ghosts or not, but it's what I do. So the Fae make their own rules, but they have to abide by them.
Yes.
Um,
Certain ones.
certain ones. Some Fae are capricious in their behavior. They're very capricious in their behavior because they can lead you. They can keep you safe and warm and fed all the way through a deep, dark forest and keep away all the predators and lead you straight to a cliff and push you off.
Right. They just care about what they want out of whatever they're doing. And if they feel like, their feelings change, kind of like a Democrat or a Republican, if their feelings change eventually, then their feelings change. And they don't really care about what you think or feel.
Yeah.
And how it affects you negatively or positively. That's just what capricious means.
Yeah, it is, because they've got their own internal agenda that may change.
It may not make
them.
sense. That's a huge thing, is that fairies don't make sense to us, like, as a race. When a fairy is doing something, then you can't make sense of it. You usually just have to roll with it, because oftentimes you would think that they have a motive, and then they just don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Fae are they're an interesting genre, and there was what was the name of that stop action animation film about the little girl who was transformed into a doll or something like that, and she had buttons for eyes.
Oh, Coraline?
Coraline.
Yes.
Yeah.
For a moment, I thought you were talking about that YouTube video of the girl with the doll that ended up killing the entire town.
Yeah, no, that was just freaking demonic. But Coraline was another example of a Fae spirit.
Yeah.
That could warp and change reality like the Fae can. So they have their own
rules,
and they can make them up, but they abide by them.
Yes, and that's another important distinction, is that the Fae, they have rules and they follow them, but they don't have to. They can sprout off and do whatever they want, just like the human race. And other creatures, like ghosts and werewolves and vampires and other mythological creatures that a lot of people can't tell the difference between, they don't have rules that they follow. They are bound to those rules. They have no choice to follow them. They have to. And, you have to stay out of the sunlight, because that much vitamin D will make you explode. And that is a lifestyle. That is a rule that has been grown within your body as a vampire.
Right.
And a Fae can be like, don't go out into the sunlight. I'm going to do it anyway just because I want to. What's it like in the sun? And that's an important distinction. See, the word of the day is distinction.
Distinction.
Is telling something apart from something else, because that is what's important.
Yeah, because if you were to stab a Twilight fairy in chest with a wooden stake, it might not kill it. It would just...
Who knows what she would write?
Who knows what it would do? It might just kiss you on the lips. I don't know.
Might propose.
Might propose. Impregnate you
I love it.
with a half ogre or something. I don't know. But the point is, there's in game. There's I'm sure there's ways. There are spells like identify and other things like that could tell you the difference. But it is important to make a distinction. When in our next video we're going to continue talking about. We're going to continue to talk about the Fae.
Sorry, I'll take him on.
Yes, what was in this? I thought it was just lemon. When we return, in our next video, we're going to talk about dungeon mastering and creating new Fae and what you should and shouldn't do. You can do anything you want being a dungeon master, but some things you should and some things you shouldn't.
We can also talk about how it is to play a Fae character, because I do have some experience in that.
That's right. So, on behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern,
I am Lyric Owens.
And I am Dr. Jeff Goins, and we wish for you to want for nothing but adventure. Don't forget to look us up at www.dwarventavern.net. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
You forgot. At first I feared it, then I charged.
At first I feared it, then I charged. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
I'm going to cut that out entirely.
No. Cut it not.
Can't believe you.
I like my candidness.